Water required. This is the Bat Flip Podcast. Now here's your host, Damian, David, and Matt. Welcome in, everyone, to another emergency episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. Damian and David here along with you tonight, and we are talking about Roki Sasaki. The decision has been made, and he has decided to choose the Los Angeles Dodgers. The favorite all along, which most people had expected, even going back to last year when there was rumors of him being posted. We had got down to three finalists with the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Blue Jays. Some momentum at first we thought it was going to be the Padres, and then this morning we got some news the Padres were going to drop out or were dropping out, and then it was basically Dodgers and Blue Jays. Blue Jays make a weird trade for some more international free agency space, and people think maybe that's a sign. And about 3:00 East or West Coast time today, Roki posted on his Instagram page that he was choosing the Los Angeles Dodgers, which has been met with a worldwide storm of comments everywhere, as you could assume. The Dodgers get another high-level talent. But David, we are here for another emergency episode. How are we doing?
I mean, the Cubs were eliminated last week, so I'm good. You know, it's one of those things where it's Cubs Con. We're all having fun over in my sphere of the world. Derek Lee and Sammy Sosa made the Cubs Hall of Fame. I'm having a great time in terms of that. But Roki Sasaki had eliminated my team. He went to the team we all figured he was going to, right? Like that. It's disappointing. Certainly from a baseball perspective, I got my Blue Jays shirt on. I was hoping he was going to the Blue Jays just because it would have been more fun for sure. But how can you tell a guy, how could you choose the Dodgers, right? Like you're pretty much guaranteed. I won't say guaranteed a World Series ring, but like you're going to be winning a lot over the next 6 years. Like, how can you tell a guy, nah, you're not, you shouldn't be choosing winning. Like that's what these athletes all want to do. So, I get it, but I'm disappointed. I wanted to see some fireworks there and we didn't get them.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't get the fireworks of the shock that he was going to Toronto, and I think we should start off by saying all Toronto fans, we are sorry. Like even I'm a Dodger fan, right? And I'm going to have a real biased expectation and look at this because I think it's great, obviously, right? Like, but the way that Toronto just consistently finds their way to being the runner-up or like the bridesmaid for these guys, it just honestly it sucks. It really does because Toronto has really good fans. When Roger Sanders gets packed, it's such a good environment. They deserve to have a winning team. And nobody just wants to take their money at this moment. But I mean, Sasaki wasn't really a money problem, but
right.
It's still like trying to convince someone to go to another place, go to Toronto like that. It's really hard. And especially like an import Japanese player, Toronto's also really far away. It's East Coast, basically. Like a lot of Japanese players like to stay more on the West Coast because it's closer to the time zone and stuff. So it's really hard. And Toronto's not really set up in a place to win long term right now either. They've had their own turmoil at this point. So it just, that part of it really, it does put a damper on things here. But I guess let's first just talk about Roki, the player, and what not what to expect, but what we know about him so far, and then we'll go on to the fit and the whole free agency and everything from there. So, Roki Sasaki, 23-year-old from Japan. Per Fangraphs, if he was to be on a prospect list right now, he is a 65 future value, which is going to be one of the top prospects in baseball.
Mhm.
Has a 80 grade splitter right now, gonna be in contention for one of the best splitters in the game right away, which is what Japanese players are known for. Throws over 100 miles an hour. His command is really kind of shaky at times. It can have some moments where it really gets away. His slider, it really backed up this year and in performance value wise. And I think he has a curveball or something too. I could be wrong, but so I think the one thing that is needs to be said here is that Sasaki isn't coming in and going to be a ace level pitcher right away.
Yeah.
He has all of the talent to be, but there is some concern and some risk here that he could not turn out to be what everyone thinks he can be, right? So
Yeah.
the I think the impact that people are expecting him to have this year, I think needs to be tempered a little bit.
Yeah.
But obviously he's a talented player. He has all the talent in the world. He could be one of the best pitchers in baseball one day. I just don't think that's going to be right away in the season that is 2025.
Right. I'm trying to grab the league leaders of Japan from the year that Roki pitched with Shota Imanaga and Yoshinobu Yamamoto over
Yeah.
in Japan. As I recall, from looking at those stats back when Shota and Yamamoto were free agents, they outperformed Roki in the
Mhm.
Japanese league. And both, those guys are both a little bit older. Not something that it's like unexpected, but Roki's he's a good pitcher, right? Like this is the prospect build of a pitcher that if you could like mold a pitcher, like if you're making your MLB The Show pitch dynasty pitcher, right? Like you're like, this is my created pitcher. It's usually a guy like Roki Sasaki, right? 100-mile-an-hour fastball, great splitter with tons of downward movement, a slider, a changeup. Like he's got everything you need to succeed tools wise. But the execution for Roki has not been as good in Japan against Japanese competition, where the offense is actually down the last couple of years. He's got like a 2.35 ERA this last year. That's really good, right? That's great, what you want to see, but that's not among the league leaders in Japan. That's not the best Japan has to offer. He, got
Yeah.
a runs allowed per nine of 2.76. So he was actually kind of a little bit lucky to get the 2.35 ERA. And this is a league where every pitcher's in the twos. So I don't think he's a finished product. And I thought part of his recruitment process was going to be, let's go to an organization that can develop me and change me into a really good pitcher. And I know you're going to disagree with me. I think the Dodgers are a terrible organization for this, because the Dodgers have very consistently turned young pitchers' arms into Swiss cheese. They have had so many arm injuries over the last several years where they've extracted maximum value from their players and then lost them. Starting with Walker Buehler, he's the first one that I recall of coming up, being a really young star, blowing out his arm. He's had Tommy John surgery twice now. We've seen 4 or 5 young pitchers come up and get hurt right away last year. I think River Ryan, Kyle Hurt, like a lot of guys getting hurt in this Dodgers organization right now. Development wise, they're getting maximum value whenever those pitchers are pitching. Bobby Miller is basically the only negative story to this point over the last several seasons from Dodgers pitching development. Maybe James Paxton, right? But he was 35, so stuff was going down anyway. I just I just think if Roki's going to a team and looking at these development strategies, the Dodgers are not a team that I am choosing first for development strategy. We're seeing a lot of teams picking up guys who are prioritizing arm health and prioritizing different ways to develop their arms. The Dodgers have prioritized velocity, and it's resulted in injury, but they've weathered those storms and have been able to win World Series and make it work. They've also been able to recruit the best pitchers in Japan. So it doesn't seem to matter. I thought that would matter. I thought that would maybe bring the Padres into the mix, the Blue Jays, the Cubs, the Red Sox. Like, I thought a lot of those organizations could close the gap to the Dodgers because they have better pitching development. They have more player friendly pitching development, arm friendly pitching development. Doesn't seem to matter. Roki goes to the Dodgers, and that's one of those things where I just think he could have done a little more. I think in terms of choosing an organization that would find the best route of success for a guy who, he is a lot of velocity. The Dodgers have been able to tick guys up in velocity, but have the Dodgers been able to get guys add pitches? I haven't seen the Dodgers really being the team that adds sliders, sweepers, cutters to repertoires. Like, they're a team that gets the most out of what you have, it seems like.
No, I disagree. And let me disagree to the fact of, yes, the Dodgers have pitching injuries. That does not mean that the Dodgers don't develop pitchers. The Dodgers do develop pitching. They have one of the best pitching development plans to make players be good. It just also comes at part of the risk of hurting their arm a little bit, right? Like
A little bit.
well, I mean, like, but you see through all of baseball, it's not just the Dodgers that have a bunch of arm injuries, right?
Mhm.
Like a ton of pitchers have arm injuries. It's been a problem since this whole thing started with like the sticky stuff ban, right? Like, we all started kind of realizing more pitching injuries happen around that time, post pandemic too, like, because the rest and stuff is different. And the Dodgers do develop pitching well. It's the fact of they need to figure out how to keep pitchers healthy, right? And that's something they self-proclaimed. Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes have both self-proclaimed, like, we have to look at a way to keep our pitchers healthy. Now, they have added pitches to players as well. They have used, like, Tyler Anderson came over here and they said, "Hey, move your changeup to be this way instead of the way you were throwing it," right? And it became one of the best pitches in baseball the year he was there. He went to the Angels and they tried to change it and it's not doing it anymore. Like, they have ways, and they do have people change, but the problem is like, they don't say, "Hey, scrap your curveball and throw just your slider." Like, all they say is change your grip on your curveball to this, and it seems to work. Like, they just don't have them scrap pitches. They just change the pitch to the shape they want it to be and go from there. So that's the part I disagree on. Is I think they do develop pitching well. They just don't do a good job at keeping pitchers healthy long term, right? And that's also pretty scary because Roki has had some arm scares already. Like, I think it was either shoulder fatigue or something in his elbow, this not last year but the year before, that cropped up. But let me see. Yeah, I think it was in 2023 because he had 91 innings pitched in Japan that year. He's only had a career high 129 innings in one season, anyways. But I did find the stats between Yamamoto, Imanaga, and Roki's last year in Japan. All right, so let's look at it.
Right?
Yeah, well, 2023 for Yamamoto and Imanaga, and then Roki this year. I want to do each of their last final season there. So Yamamoto in Japan had a 116 ERA and a 142 runs allowed per nine in 171 innings. Right, that is with an 8.6 a 0.86 WHIP and a strikeout per nine of 9.3. That was his last season there, right? And he had been the best pitcher for like 3 years in Japan.
Yep.
Shota Imanaga last year had a 2.66 ERA and a 2.77 runs allowed per nine in 159 innings, a 1.019 WHIP with 10.6 strikeouts per nine. Roki Sasaki this year had a 2.35 ERA with 2.76 run allowed per nine and 111 innings, a 1.036 WHIP, and a 10.5 strikeouts per nine. So about the same amount of strikeouts as Imanaga. Actually, Yamamoto's was even lower than that. And in between their ERAs, between Yamamoto and Imanaga in their last full seasons there. And the WHIP was slightly higher on Roki than it was to Imanaga, but I think that mostly goes back to the fact that his command is really shaky and he's still
Mhm.
pretty young trying to figure that out. So I would say he's somewhere in right now in between the Yamamoto and Imanaga mold of what to kind of expect heading into this year.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, I think Imanaga had like an A plus level rookie season to what
Right.
to expect here. Most people weren't expecting him to have the level of success he had right away. Um,
I wasn't.
so no, yeah, I don't think most people
Yeah.
were. So I think most people were looking at Imanaga as like, hey, he should be like a back end starter. He looked like a legitimate like number 2 starter this year. So I think what we can kind of basically say on Roki is I think coming in right now, expect him to be a 3 or a 4 level
Yeah.
pitcher. Like expect him to have a mid 3s to 4 ERA most likely, if not, a little bit higher, just depends on stuff. But you got to factor in the situation he's going into. He's not going to be needed to be the ace level
Right.
pitcher.
Right. That's kind of the difference, right? In between you going to the Jays, where he'd have to probably be the number 2 behind Gosman, maybe the 3 behind Barrios, but I would
Yeah, I would
probably
say probably behind Barrios.
well, that's a little bit more. I mean, you're definitely penciled into the playoff rotation, right? Like that's the Dodgers are almost certainly going to limit Roki's innings. This is a
Yeah,
guy again who has not thrown more than I have the innings right here
129 and a
100,
third.
129 and a third
Yeah,
professional innings. This is also a guy who is trending downward, at least in Japan. Last year, he trended downward in terms of strikeouts. His walks went up. Not what you want to see. But again, you're talking from absolutely 80 grade elite command with everything to 70, 65 in terms of, how that on the 80 to 20 scouting scale of, how good that is, right? He went from just the best ever to pretty good. Um, you know, I think the Imanaga thing is it, it's going to warp people's thought. I think Yamamoto actually probably had a more realistic rookie season to what Roki's going to do, which was Yamamoto pitched really good for when he was out there. He struggled to stay healthy, but that wasn't, we talked about the Dodgers injury stuff. It wasn't really on them. It was just kind of freak things, but it's also,
yeah,
he was going to need to rest. He was not going to throw 190 innings in
yeah,
his rookie season.
yeah. I think that's what most people don't understand is like he was going to be rested anyways. The shoulder issue that took him out for 2 months just it was a little bit worrisome at first, but then they also kept him out longer than they probably needed to on the cautious side there. But also one thing to that has been talked about a lot in Dodger land going into the season is they're going to be utilizing a 6-man rotation.
Probably, yeah.
They've already basically confirmed that they will. Um, Ohtani's not going to pitch until like May, and then you already have Yamamoto who had his stuff, Glass now who was coming off his own, Snell, Sasaki they want to limit. Like they have plenty of guys there that they want to be cautious with throughout the year too. So they're going to be running a 6-man, which is going to help limit innings already at that point. So yeah,
I mean, and let me take this back to, I actually grabbed the names. I had somebody, Stan from the Cubs Discord, give me the names, and I want to throw them in there because I think it's important context to, if you are a rival fan looking to root against Roki Sasaki, if you are a Dodger fan hoping to have Roki's elbow remain intact, here's a list of the Dodgers pitching injuries that they, as Damian said, have noted they need to keep these guys healthy. Dustin May has had Tommy John surgery twice. Tony Gonsolin has had Tommy John surgery. Nick Frasso missed most of last year with a shoulder injury. It's a prospect they traded for. Clayton Kershaw's dealt with various arm injuries. That's not really one I'm worried about. Emmett Sheehan, Tommy John surgery. Bobby Miller, shoulder injury. Walker Buehler, 2 Tommy John surgeries. Yamamoto, shoulder injury. River Ryan, Tommy John surgery. Gavin Stone, Tommy John surgery. Kyle Hurt, shoulder, Tommy John surgery. That's just the starters. I'll leave the bullpen guys, but that is a lot of young pitchers entering the league on their rookie deals, getting hurt in the Dodgers organization.
yeah,
I think, the Dodgers just have to be better about that. Maybe they presented something to Roki that gave him confidence going forward. But if I was a free agent pitcher, this is publicly available information. We know this. We know the Dodgers extract the most value they can from the guys and their arm blows out. And then Walker Buehler's the Red Sox now. Like they don't,
yeah.
it's just,
Well,
it's a very difficult thing. And if you're Roki, do you risk that? Do you risk your right arm on coming over early, going to the team that's very risky when it comes to these young arms? I don't know, but it seems like he's made that decision and said, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth the risk.
Well, and there's a lot more that goes into development rather than like, hey, I'm worried that my arm might fall off. Like there's a lot more that goes into that. Like as far as like game planning scenarios, the way you make people feel comfortable, and apparently the one of the big things for Sasaki was he had a conversation with Yoshinobu Yamamoto apparently recently, as in like the past couple days or whatever. And Yamamoto basically explained to him like, "Hey, this is the things that we do here, like that they showed me here coming over that I was worried and skeptical about last year, and like how they made me feel so comfortable and what they do to make players feel empowered in this organization and stuff." And that like really kind of helped settle Roki's mind for where
Mhm.
to go. So there's something to be said about like, hey, there's worried about pitching injuries, right? But then there's also something to be said about like the behind the scenes and the day-to-day things that teams do as far as development and game planning and making sure you get the best out of what you want to be. And by all accounts, the Dodgers are one of the best at that
Oh yeah.
in the league.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think the arm injuries scare most people off because arm injuries are also a thing of just around the thing. Like anyone can have an arm injury at any time, right? Like pitching is pitching is very unnatural for your body. All it takes is one pitch and your arm blows out. Like there's no for sure science like that your arm's going to blow out here if you do this. Like there's history for like a team that hey, like you should be worried about this, but it's also something that they can try to work around, right? And Roki should be um he should be aware of it for sure. Um what we got here.
That was a wild one. I'm not unpacking that one.
Dodgers are the LeBron of baseball, i.e., the problem in the sport, not a good problem, but a bad problem. Like fires are a bad problem, but not to Dodger fans, as only successful people's homes burned.
I don't.
Okay,
All
I
right.
I, I don't know how to really respond to that one there, but we'll just take that off and move
Slide it
along.
off. It's
But
you know.
but thank you for your comment. We very much do appreciate it and giving us a
Yeah.
laugh here, but um like there's something to be said about that, right? So it's something to watch for moving forward on how do the Dodgers respond, and then are they able to keep people healthy
Mhm.
moving forward? And Adam says he seconds that
He
last
would.
comment. So um, yeah, Adam, I'm glad your picture is your new offensive coordinator for the Browns. Um, but so let's talk
Yeah.
about we talked about Roki a lot, right? And we've talked kind of about the fit there, but let's talk about the process that brought us to this moment, right? Because we hit on it a little bit early, but we didn't really dive into the process here. So obviously we're talking about international free agency money. He was limited to only signing bonus pools of what you could get there. Um, it was kind of think what they say like 20 something teams had reached out, tried to get a meeting. I think only like 12 or something had got an actual meeting with
Yep.
Roki, and that was kind of quickly narrowed down really fast
Mhm.
to only a handful of teams. I think the what was it? It was the Yankees, the Mets, the Cubs, the Rangers, the Dodgers, Blue Jays, Padres, and I think there's one more that I'm
Giants.
missing. Giants. Um, that was it. And there was Tampa Bay would have had a lot of interest there. But once everything happened with the trop, that kind of thwarted all of their plans there and Roki's kind of interest. But regardless, it was those kind of handful of teams. And then when was it? It was Monday. I think is when Monday is when we started getting some stuff of like, hey, this team has said they're out. This team has said they're out. Oh, Red Sox were another one that wanted a meeting. Don't think they ever got a meeting,
Yeah,
but
I think the Red Sox got declined beforehand.
yeah. And then it was like Monday afternoon, Monday night, it came out. It was like Padres, Blue Jays, Dodgers. Those are the three finalists
Mhm.
moving forward. So once we got the hey, these people are out, this is the finalist group. Like, it could take until this weekend because obviously he had to make his decision before the 23rd,
Right.
which was a week from last Thursday. But once we got to that point, what was going through your mind?
Once you kicked I thought the biggest threats to the Dodgers were the Padres and the Cubs. Once you kicked one of those teams off and put the Blue Jays in there, and then this morning once the Padres eliminated, he's Dodgers. The the biggest thing that I thought Roki needed, and I think ultimately is what helps him choose the Dodgers, is that I think he wanted some Japanese teammates.
Yeah.
And he's going to have Yamamoto there for a lot longer than he'll have Yu Darvish over
And
at the
Ohtani.
Padres.
Yep.
Right. And Ohtani too. But I mean, I guess Ohtani's 9 years on his deal. So
Nine
yeah, I
more.
mean, you've got 11 guaranteed seasons, at least the next six, right? That Roki is guaranteed to be a Dodger. He's got two Japanese teammates, like the Cubs couldn't guarantee Imanaga or Seiya. Padres can't guarantee you that long. Like, he wanted some Japanese teammates. It's pretty clear with given who he was negotiating around, who was last. It seemed the Cubs were the last before that final cut. Blue Jays could give him the most money. And
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting. They made that trade today. Miles Straw goes to the Blue Jays, $2 million in international money. And then the Blue Jays also ate like a bunch of the Miles Straw contract, which is a terrible contract. That
It's
guy
like
cannot.
3 million. Yeah.
Um, so the Blue Jays have went in and grabbed a bunch of international money, but from my perspective, that felt like a last gasp effort to close the gap to the Dodgers. It always felt like the gap was there for the Dodgers, especially once the Padres announced they were out, because the Padres were, to our understanding, probably the second strongest case. I thought the Cubs were the third strongest, but again, it always felt like no matter how strong a case you can build for that team, right? Play with the superstars or the Padres, go to that Cubs pitching development that has taken, it's a ball that's starting to roll, right? And be that kind of the head in the forefront of that along with Saidi Minaga. No matter how much you spin that, none of it is going to play on the Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani, with Yoshinobu Yamamoto. You can't fight against that. There was never it's a juggernaut, right? It's a thing that's almost impossible to fight against.
Right.
In It's one of those things where I was hoping that Roki Sasaki was a guy who wanted to carve his own path, which was the Blue Jays path, right? That was they carve your own path, make your name, take a team that is very clearly on the way down the hill, right? And try and pull them back from the brink of fallen off the cliff.
Yeah.
That would have been a really big thing, because I think if Roki comes, maybe Vlad Jr. re-signs that extension. Maybe they, get a little bit more. I guess they get more aggressive. They've already been really aggressive. They just aren't getting anyone. But
Yeah.
maybe Roki changes that outcome for the Blue Jays because it gives them some life. As it stands, right? Blue Jays are now in a spot where Vlad Jr. is still not signing, even though we keep getting that they're trying to re-sign him. If you're Vlad Jr., you just wait. You just wait. You can't. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you're saying no to 350 million, 400 million, and you might not get that in free agency, but you don't want to stick with the Blue Jays because they can't get anybody to sign to already play with you for 1 year. Like, Roki could have changed that. And I'm very disappointed that he didn't choose that route, but I completely understand it because, like, odds of him winning a World Series ring are like way higher with the Dodgers. And if
Yeah.
winning is what matters to him, then there you go.
Well, I think it's winning, and then it's like we've talked about before. It's proximity to Japan, which is a big thing to these players. It's playing with other talents that are from your country. Like, I think there's a bunch of factors that go into it, and honestly, like, I think the Blue Jays would have a better chance if they were a sustained winner or had a future that was bright. They don't have a bright future at this point. Their two big superstars are free agents at the end of this year. Their star pitcher is aging, and he's already showed a little bit of signs of slowing down. One of their other big free agent signings is on the tail end of his career, only a year or two left, and hasn't looked good and struggled to stay healthy. Like, they don't have anything long term that makes anyone want to plant roots down there, right?
Right.
So that really, really hurts their case here for that. I always felt the biggest threat was the Padres, right? They had everything. They had all the superstars. They had the West Coast. They have the ability to win. They had Yu Darvish, who was his Roki Sasaki's mentor. Like that, I
Right.
think that was underplayed. Is like Roki Sasaki looked up to Yu Darvish. He was his mentor. Like Darvish has been very vocal about the Dodgers and players, Japanese players going over there, and he didn't want that to be a pipeline. And so I always felt like, hey, that might mean something to Sasaki because mentors and all that stuff in Japan, it's very much culture based.
Mhm.
That is very sacred, and and obviously I think it mattered somewhat, but it didn't matter to the level I think of what we probably thought it should. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously going to a situation where it's you have fellow countrymen, you have the ability to win, you have the development case there that they can show off, and and yeah. So
Yeah.
one thing that I think we should mention for a lot of people that don't understand how this process or what this contract will look like, I think we should kind of
Mhm.
talk more about that
Yeah.
because this isn't the Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Like he came in, he signed for a big deal, and he's locked. Like whatever. This is a minor league deal, effectively. This is basically the
Mhm.
route Shohei Ohtani took a few years ago. So Roki Sasaki signed with the Dodgers for $6.5 million. They actually
Mhm.
traded for more international space from the Phillies and signed him for $6.5 million. It's the largest guarantee in international money since 2017. Who happened to come over at that time?
So one of the Cuban guys, Robert.
I think it was Ohtani, wasn't it?
Oh,
Or was
was
he
it just
18?
Ohtani?
Yeah, I think because his free agency or
Ohtani
his
came
first
before
year was
18.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would
So
have been
it
17
would
odds. Okay.
yeah. So it would have been Ohtani. Um but what this means is that he will have the next 3 seasons will be a renewable contract, be
Mhm.
for league minimum basically for the next 3 seasons at least. Next 3 seasons, he might get super two potentially depending on his that.
Depends.
But let's just go on the preface
Yeah.
of a normalized thing: 3 renewable contracts at league minimum dollars, and then he starts his arbitration process from there. So the Dodgers have him under control for at least 6 seasons as
Mhm.
of right now,
Yep.
3 of those being at league minimum dollars.
Mhm.
And then the first two of arbitration probably being under 20-ish million at least. The first year is probably high single digits in,
Yeah.
in millions. If he turns out to be what we expect him to be there. So this isn't a long-term, like high dollar deal
Mhm.
or whatever. By the time he's up for free agency, Blake Snell's deal will be over. Tyler Glasnow's deal will be over. Obviously, they won't have Kershaw at that point, Teoscar at that point. They'll have enough money to be able to re-sign him with all these other
Mhm.
pitchers there. But I think one thing that should be played is like, hey, what this does financially for the Dodgers. Like, obviously, they've been spending all this money, but now they get a guy for 3 years at a literally league minimum type deal who has very good
Yeah.
potential.
That just to me that says everybody, and I think everybody was, but everybody should have been pitching this and slamming it home. This was a no-brainer for these teams that I think get way too caught up in extracting, value for the money they spend,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of, well, so and so team needs to be frugal or win a move or spend a certain amount on a guy because a couple million extra is too much. There's a lot of that going on these days, and I think I'm starting. Maybe I'm getting to be too old for this. Maybe I'm getting to the point where I'm like, man, these guys are making millions. I don't care if it's 10 million or 15 million, but we need to stop with this like extracting value thing. But with this deal specifically, with the Roki Sasaki deal, the value is already it's guaranteed just excess value. The
Yeah.
amount cost here is completely negligible. This was a player that could fit in every single one of these 30 teams' is even restricted budgets. It's just it's disappointing that the one team that just absolutely does not need to save money on one of their star players is saving money on one of their star players because of the way this deal has to be structured.
Yeah.
through the international free agency period. It's like I would much prefer the Dodgers having paid Roki Sasaki several $100 million, because eventually they are going to be stuck with a roster of 26 players spend $100 million on, right?
Right.
So eventually they have to stop. They can't just keep doing it. But this is just one of those cases where he's so cheap. It makes
Yeah.
all the sense in the world. It just stacks into the international free agent money. The Dodgers didn't make a ton of agreements with this period, so they were able to dedicate most or all of their free agent pool to Roki Sasaki.
They had 3 high level international free agency commits who all left and signed elsewhere because they were waiting on Roki. They had, I think, one went to the White Sox for over $1 million. Another one went to the Twins for over $1 million or
like
1.5, and then one went to the Pirates, I think, for like $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
They had they had some big commits here, but this is part of waiting for the Sasaki domino to fall, which is kind of why it sucks for the Blue Jays here, because they also traded for more money, and it's like we're 2 days past the signing opening. There's not $8 million left of international free agents out there,
right?
Like to that level that you should be spending on. So that's why that hurts them a little bit more. But one thing I think that should be noted as well is that Sasaki would be eligible for the prospect eligible draft picks for this season, or if he wins the Cy Young in any of the next 3 seasons, he would be available for those draft picks as well. Not saying it will happen, not saying he's going to win Rookie of the Year, but it should be noted that unlike Yamamoto last year, Yamamoto was not eligible because he actually came over via the regular signing system where he got his big contract, where Sasaki came over early. So Sasaki's minor league deal, still technically a prospect at that moment. So he would be eligible for that draft pick compensation if he wins that. But I think we should talk about how Sasaki coming over early, because we really haven't mentioned a lot about this, because we wanted to get more facts before we talked about it. But him forfeiting the big dollars to waiting, he could have waited 2 years and came over and got a Yoshinobu Yamamoto level contract of $325 million or whatever, if he showed improvement in the next 2 seasons too. But taking the Shohei Ohtani route basically and coming over early, sacrificing that big deal to come to the major leagues, because he says he wants to spend as much time here as he possibly can. He wants to make the Hall of Fame here in America. He wanted to start that clock early. He thinks that he could have done the free agency in 2 years, but getting to this part, he gets money and he could still hit 1 or maybe even 2 free agencies here in America. That's definitely a big deal. So what was your thoughts on Sasaki, forfeiting that and wanting to come over early? Because this is honestly something that could have happened last offseason.
Right. I don't know that the clause in his contract worked until this offseason. I think it was once he reached this point, he could come over.
So he didn't have a clause, actually.
So he just forced his way out then.
He asked to come out last year. He threatened to sit out the season. They told him no. They hadn't felt like he had delivered enough to the organization there. So he did it this year. They were basically doing the same battle again, and basically Roki was like, "I'm not playing, and I won't play unless you put me over there. And like, even if I do play, like this will be a recurring thing. So we might as well just get it done now."
So my second thought on this is, 6 years is a long time there, and given we've talked about the Dodgers' injury history there, but especially when it comes to pitchers in general, you are not guaranteed your free agency period with a healthy arm as you are now. I think Roki probably threw away some money here. I think the guy signing a 25-year-old at his peak is much more valuable than signing a 29-year-old who might be after his peak. Regardless, for these major league teams, they operate in that way, that the only guys we're seeing getting these mega deals really are the best of the best 30-year-olds, Ohtani, Judge, or the 26-year-old Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, Yamamoto, Juan Soto guys hitting free agency. That's all we're seeing getting these super huge mega deals. I think maybe we'll see what Kyle Tucker gets. Vlad Jr.'s, I think 26. Like, we'll see how this kind of keeps playing out as we hit free agency, but he's going to be 29. That's a pretty typical age for a free agent. We see a lot of 29 to 31-year-olds hitting free agency. He has to play well for 6 years. That's really what it boils down to. And like we've discussed already on this pod, there's no guarantee that he starts really hot. There's no guarantee that he is able to translate as well as the 2 Japanese pitchers that came over last year, because the the fastball shape it's not as ideal as you want it to be, and major league hitters are a little bit better over here than they are in Japan. Like a lot of the love around Yamamoto was the curveball. Roki's best off speed is the splitter. A lot of guys who throw the splitter lose the feel. Mark Leiter Jr. Lost the feel of the splitter a ton. A bunch of other guys just, every now and again, the splitter goes from being the best pitch in baseball to I just can't throw it. I just don't have the feel for it. And he doesn't have any other off speeds besides that seem to be major league level. And so it's like, if Roki can't develop that slider, he can't develop that curveball, he can't get to a point where he's got those 3 offerings that are really good, then hitters are going to spit on the splitter. That was hard to say.
Yeah.
And they're going to sit on the fastball and they're going to hit it. And it's going to be really tough for him to generate whiffs that way. It's a lot of, I bring it up Cubs, but that's where I see it is Hector Neris last year had a fastball and a splitter. He had nothing else. And hitters just watched the splitter hit the dirt, then swung at the fastball and killed him. And that is the exact problem with a pitcher with the Roki Sasaki repertoire, but it's the Dodgers. They can definitely get Roki's slider working. I have full faith in that, but there is 6 years from now, we're going to look back and say Roki could have waited 2 years in Japan, signed a $300 some odd million deal, or through this production in the major leagues, gotten what? And that's the big question. And I think he definitely threw away money to do this. But if you're throwing away money, but you're going to be a Dodger, you're going to win some World Series, you're going to pitch in the playoffs, like, I'm sure in his mind, totally worth it. And that's fine. But when we're sitting here analyzing it, it's like, he definitely threw away money. And I think that's what it's going to boil down to. I have faith. I was always definitely a Roki believer, especially when he was remotely connected to the Cubs. I wanted him. I definitely think he's a guy who's going to get it right. But right now, 2025 Roki is probably not a guy. I wouldn't pick him to win the Rookie of the Year. We're going to do our predictions later on. I'm not going to pick him to win Rookie of the Year. Spoiler alert. Like, I just don't think that repertoire is advanced enough to be more than maybe a dominant reliever at this point. And I wonder how the Dodgers used him in that role, that kind of swingman role. Maybe they pitch him out of the bullpen to try to limit the innings. I'm not sure yet. I'm sure they'll probably leave him in the rotation though. That has to be part of the negotiations, right? Is we're going to start you this and that.
I would assume he's in the rotation. I just, at this point, the way it is, but also the Japan ball is smaller than the MLB ball. So we saw Senga, who has one of the best splitters / fork balls ever. He struggled the first half of his rookie season over here, and he was a 30-year-old established player because of finding that grip with the splitter. He eventually figured it out. But you do struggle with that. And like you mentioned, Roki's slider is not anywhere near MLB level at this moment. So it's going to really be on the Dodgers to either reshape the slider, get him a cutter or something to help play off that fastball, or a sinker. The sinker is like one thing that they did help Yamamoto develop.
Right.
He had a straight fastball, and he had the cutter. They helped him develop a sinker, which really helped him take off from there. But it's going to be, I think we'll see a good thing about their development, about what pitches he either learns or that, because right now it's like the fastball it doesn't have great shape, but it's fast. So wonder how they exploit that. And then it's like, he has a really good splitter, but how is that going to translate? And he doesn't have a good slider at this moment. So how can you build off of that and the rest of the rotation repertoire? And we'll talk more about that on a guest that we're going to have here in about a month or so. I don't want to like that. But we're working on a guest that has more knowledge and about pitch shapes and what to expect from there. Um, and he might do some YouTube videos on Roki Sasaki already. So if you're interested in that, maybe you look up his Roki Sasaki pitch stuff on YouTube and you might find the guy. But yeah, just a little foreshadowing. But we want to talk more about that when we get there because
Mhm.
we are just going off of baseline information. I think we need to make that really clear. We're going off of baseline information. Japanese does not have public data like we
Right.
have for baseball savant or anything. Like we don't have that data, so we're just going off of basically the eyes and other analysis from other people. So that's just stuff you have to watch for. So it will be interesting to see what the developmental plan is because Roki obviously must have thought there was something there within the Dodgers pitch for them to be or for him to be willing to go there too. So
Yeah. I'm excited. I want to see him pitch. I think spring training is going to be very exciting for that. And then
yeah.
the last thing I think we can note here is the Cubs and the Dodgers open the
Yeah.
season in Japan.
I
And
was literally just gonna say something and ask you that.
yeah, so I mean, part of my assumption was, if you're the Cubs, you're pitching that Roki's pitching in Japan. He's starting the other
That's what I
game
was
that
gonna say.
Imanaga's not starting. My assumption is that's part of the pitch from the Dodgers. You're starting
Well,
game 2 in Japan.
you also have Yamamoto
Right. So Yamamoto starting game 1. I mean,
and then Roki.
and then Roki starting game 2. I think that's
Maybe. Yeah.
that's what you have to do. And maybe the Dodgers go, and we're in Japan. We're not fully fleshed out from spring training. Yamamoto starting game 1, but going 3 innings. Glass now is going 3 innings.
They
Bullpen after
could.
that. That's certainly something that they could do. And if I would probably do that too. I think that's probably smart.
Well,
Um,
another thing they could do, just interested, sorry, not to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
the Dodgers also have 2 warm-up games in Japan against Japanese teams. I think one's the national team and then one's like a club team, one of the MPB teams or whatever. So I wonder if they say, "Hey, Roki, like you can pitch in Japan, you can pitch against one of these Japanese teams that you're always used to facing already. So it's familiar hitters
Yeah.
and everything to you already." So I wonder if they do that. But here we got another comment from our friend Adam here. He said the wind whips through Wrigley, a mournful refrain as news of Sasaki, the Cubs' disdain. A sigh escapes David in a salty despair. Another ace launched a crushing snare.
You can't see if
right.
Adam, if you had written that yourself, I would have been impressed. But since you just grabbed it with AI, get it off the screen.
Yeah,
Just,
we know Chat GPT when we see it. All right, we know you aren't smart enough to think about a more mournful refrain.
There's
and a
no
Cubs
chance.
Disdain.
There's no chance Adam would have ever used the word refrain for anything.
Yeah, there's not a chance that Adam knows what a crushing snare is.
He's about to watch his team play for a national championship in college football. It's fine. He's on another plane of existence right now than we are. So I get it. Oh man,
I had to tell it what to do.
So
I
I think we're good. I think we talked quite a bit
Yeah.
about Roki here.
We did. Yeah, this was a big culmination. We hadn't done an emergency episode in a while, but
Mhm.
this was one of the few that we have left. There's a couple more that we will have here as it happens, but this was big.
Really? Are there any more? Maybe Pete, if he goes for actually big
Pete
contract.
Bregman,
I don't think Bregman's going to get a very big
Bregman,
deal.
potentially Santander, depending on their deals. And then maybe Tanner Scott, depending on his deal, because his deal is, from all indications, the deal is pretty big for Scott, is what's expected.
Praying the Cubs get off their ass for that one, man.
Yeah,
God,
but
I want it. I want it.
Right?
It's not going to happen, but I want
But
it. Adam, shut up.
yeah,
Stop
Adam,
talking.
he wants a big deal for the Cubs for Nick Pivetta.
No, it's at this point.
Right. But make sure to follow our social medias. You see them down there: Instagram, X, TikTok. If it doesn't get shut down, we're on all of those. Make sure to follow along. We will, we're obviously going to be doing these episodes. We do our weekly episodes. I think we have a Hall of Fame one coming up this week, because Hall of Fame gets announced on Tuesday.
Are we
so
doing it Tuesday or
probably do Monday.
okay?
And
Well,
then I don't know. We'll figure that out.
we'll figure it out.
It'll be Monday. Either we might do one Monday and Tuesday. Who knows? Um, a regular one and then a Hall of Fame one. We'll figure it out. We'll let you guys know. Follow on all of these. Make sure you have your notifications on so you know when we go live. And let us know what you think. Obviously,
Yep.
we had a couple of you guys here in the chat, but if you're watching this on replay or on podcast platforms, let us know what you think of Roki going to the Dodgers and what to expect here. So, anything else you want to wrap up on?
Also, let us know if you would want to hear Bregman after Bregman signs, Alonso if Alonso signs, Scott, Santander. If you want anybody else, right? If just let us know. Maybe we can only do 15 minutes or something, but we can hop on. We can also do spaces on Twitter. So if we follow X a little bit more and get it where people are engaging with that a little bit, we can do a space instead of maybe a live full episode, and that can be a lot shorter. But you guys can also talk. We'll moderate, and it'll be like, it's kind of like taking radio calls and stuff. So it could work. I'm interested in trying it this year at least, and maybe we'll do it for one of our emergency episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And follow along on the YouTube too, as we're in the middle of, or just kind of started our team previews. I think we've got 3 up already. We have the 4th one recorded. It should be up here in the next day or so. And then we're going to knock out all 30 teams. So if you're watching this, you're a fan of some team, and make sure to tune in for whatever episode that one is. So we can talk about your team and hopefully get you engaged with us here on the Batflip podcast. So anyways, thank you guys for tuning in to this emergency episode talking about Roki Sasaki, and we will catch you guys back here live on Monday.